This is an apartment where people can live in exchange for paying rent. Doesn't that sound nice? But there's a growing movement of people, social justice progressives and would-be socialist revolutionaries who disagree. In fact, they believe that charging rent is theft. These are ideas that I encounter more and more. That it's unethical to build housing for profit. That we should eat our landlords. Eviction is murder. But why? There's nothing wrong with wanting to profit from building housing. After all, that's the purpose of any business venture. Without profit, there'd be no way to compensate the builders. There'd be no incentive for investors to pay for these buildings to be made. Should they be working for free? Should the investors pay for these building supplies out of pocket? Some would argue you don't need profits to pay the builders. I mean, after all, look at government housing. But of course, they're employed by the government, which has none of its own money. They just take it out of your paycheck. In a free market system, transactions are made for the benefit of both parties. I have money and need an apartment. They have an apartment and need money. And they do need money. After all, having a property isn't free. They need to pay property taxes, disaster insurance, pay employees to landscape and do upkeep and maintenance. As a tenant, you're free from any of these responsibilities. And unlike paying down a mortgage, you're not tied down to that house for an extended period of time. You can leave at essentially any point. Within the parameters of your contract, of course. The far left has painted all landlords as these evil caricatures of the monopoly man. But the truth is, most landlords are just average folk like you and me, with one property, maybe two, that are just trying to feed their families and make ends meet. But the ones that do make a fair sum of money, that have tens or hundreds of properties, are housing the most people. And they tend to have the cheapest rent, too. And despite what anti-capitalists would have you believe, it's not in a landlord's best interest to charge you an unreasonable amount for rent. After all, it's not profitable to build housing if no one can afford to live there.
Can I just get a double cheeseburger and that's
The root of their argument seems to be that since housing is a necessity, that it's immoral to charge anything for it. But food is a necessity too. Should McDonald's just be giving away their burgers for free? Who would pay their cooks and cashiers? It's all very confusing. To those of you who would make the argument that charging rent is theft, I'd like to propose a hypothetical. Let's say that you're a homeowner, and for years you've been paying for a mortgage. Then you decide to go out on vacation, and while you're gone, a squatter moves into your property, and they believe they deserve to live there rent-free. Would you still think that was justified? I mean, if rent really is theft, does that make Airbnb a den of thieves? Your landlords aren't stealing from you because it isn't your property. You've invested nothing into its construction or upkeep and hold none of the risk. Your landlord has. And if you're the one insisting that these people not be compensated for their labor, then who's really the thief?